In a previous video, we looked at a bash script that used JQ, the command line JSON parser, and it just sort of displayed some of the fields, the values of the name value pairs that were found within the JSON. But this time I'm going to sort of extend that a little bit and sort of put it to use. So I'm going to read some JSON that's located at this URL seen here. So let me show you what's there. It's not just the JSON. The JSON is there. Here's paintingdata.json. That's the JSON in question. There's an object with the property painters, which is an array of objects. And then there's last name, first name, birth date, and then each painter has as another property, it is paintings. And then those have titles and file names. But there are other things in that same location, image files of the paintings in question. So what I want to do is download and read the JSON file and get the data, create a folder for each artist, and then download the files that are associated with that artist and put them into that folder. So that is what this script does. So that's the running of the previous version of this. Let me remove the painting file, do an ls. That's what's there. Let me show it more graphically. Here is my documents. And what I'm going to do when I run this new script is I will create folders with artist names, and then in those folders will be paintings by that artist. So let's do it and then talk about it this time. Okay. So this is artist_json.sh. So let's do bash artist_json.sh. And I have a bunch of wgets. One of them, I sort of suppressed the output, but then for the JPEGs, I did not suppress the output. So that's all that we saw there. And now here's my documents again. And now we see Klimt, Gustav, Manet, Edward, Rousseau, Henri, Whistler, James, Abbott, McNeil. Okay, so let's look at Rousseau. And then here are the two paintings I have by Henri Rousseau. So I created, those folders weren't there. I read the file. I looked at the data in the file. I created folders. I made up names of the artists and used them to create folders. And then I downloaded from the website these images and put them in the corresponding folder. Okay. So here is the sort of base URL. And then here is the specific file with the painting data JSON in it. Here we are concatenating the base and the file name together using wget. And this is the suppression of the output of that wget, and the standard output and the standard error sort of suppressed both. I am that file. I've looked at that file. I have to know a bit about what's in that file. I know that there is a painters property and that it is an array, so that the array has a length. So this is me finding out how many painters are in the file. And then I set up a sort of a C style for loop going from 0 up to not including $num. And so I'm going to loop over the indices of this painters array within the JSON file. Okay, I am spelling out the contents of the file into the command line JSON parser, JQ. I'm getting the ith. I have a property called painters, which is an array. I'm getting the ith element of that array, and I'm grabbing, and that's an object. and I'm grabbing the last name property of that object. And the raw means if without the R option, it tends to sort of put things in quotes, and I say I don't want the quotes. So that's the R. So I get the last name and the first name. And I showed in the previous example how to sort of do that maybe in one line. But in this version, I got the last name, and got the first name, and then I'm concatenating them together, last name, space, first name. I want it under their last name. They're more known by their last names than their first names. Okay, and then here I am, I have Manet space Edouard, or especially in the case of Whistler, I have Whistler, James Abbott McNeil with all these spaces in between. And I'm going to use that to make a folder, and I don't like spaces in my folder names. So I am replacing the 2 slashes means globally any spaces I find with an underscore. Again, in the other version, I had a better I needed, and then so have a better version of this where instead of a space, I use a regular expression to say anything that's not a capital letter, a small letter, or a number, and replace that instead of specifically a space. But a space was good enough for this version because that's a space, and my data file had in sort of James Abbott McNeil, those were spaces, and here is a space. So a space was good enough here, but in another version, there was some other white space, and so this wasn't sufficient. Okay, so that's me making the name, getting the artist name, and getting rid of spaces in the name, and here I am making a directory with that name. Now I want to find the I don't move in, I often move into the folder. I'm not going to move into that. I'm going to move things into that folder, but within the code, I am not moving things into the folder. So I don't have any CD here. I'm not moving into the folder, but when I get my image files, I will move them into the folder. So I made the folder, make their $full. I'm finding for the ith painter the number of paintings, and that varied. So I had 2 paintings by Henri Rousseau, but Manet, I had 5. So I have to get this number of paintings. So in the JSON, so I'm catting out the file. And that was the reason I didn't move into the folder, is because my file is, the JSON file is here at this level, wherever this was, happened to be my documents. If I move down in the folder, then I lose sight of my my JSON file. I could work around it, but I just decided not to move into the file. So I'm going to the file, I'm using the command line JSON parser, I'm looking at the ith painter, that painter's paintings, which is again an array, and I'm getting its length. I echoed that out just so I could see it, but I should probably comment that out. And now again, I set up another C style loop, made sure I have a different limit, num2 as opposed to num, and a different counter, j instead of I. So I don't want to confuse my nested loops. Okay. I am using, again, the jQuery parser. I have a painter's property, which is an array, and that object, that ith object, has a paintings property, which is also an array. So I'm getting the jth painting of the ith painter, and then that painting has a property name, file name. Okay, they were located at the same URL base, but this time at JPEG. So that's the location of that file. I use wget. That downloads the file. This is up here I suppressed the output of the wget. Here I did not. So we saw all the wget response as we were downloading the JPEG files. And then $JPEG is the name of the JPEG file. So then I am moving it into $full, which was the name of my directory. So this is moving the file out of documents down into the subdirectory, which was the artist's name. This is the end of my J loop over the paintings, and 26 is the end of my I loop over the painters. So that's what I wanted to show you in this example. Thanks very much for your attention.